Hey there, and welcome to Large Format Friday. I'm your host, Mat Marrash, and if this is the first time you're stopping by, here's a playlist of all of our LFF episodes. And if you haven't subscribed yet, each and every Friday, there's going to be a new upload with something different in the world of large format photography. If you have been sticking around with us, you might notice something different in the background. I cleaned up the background a little bit. We're in the same place, but now I've just got a little backdrop going on. As much as I love showing the drill press in shots, it can be confusing, like, is this guy doing a hardware show or is he going to talk about photography? So just keeping it a little bit clean. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Anyway, today I wanted to chat about traveling with large format and just some essentials I think for doing longer trips with large format photography. Hopefully at this point in the channel, if you've kind of followed along and you're getting started in large format, you might be planning a big photo project, or you already have some trips that might be coming up, some ones that are coming off of delay with COVID-19, and you want to get back out there and get shooting. Well, if that trip's going to be any longer than a couple of days, there's some considerations you might need to make in utilizing a large format kit on a trip like that. And let's start with film holders. If you're bringing film holders with you on a trip, each film holder you bring is more weight that you have to carry with you. Now, if this is just a drive-by car trip, that's fine. You're responsible for packing in, packing out, it's not too bad. But if you're flying with this gear or hiking with this gear a long way, you probably don't want to carry that many film holders. Over the years, I've done a lot of local trips and shooting based out of the studio. So I've gotten really used to having, 10, 20 film holders. That's not a problem. But on a trip, that can be a really big limitation. So what I recommend is bring just as many film holders as you think you're going to use in a day, maybe 20% more than that number. For me, the magic number on holders, I think the last big trip I did, I brought 8 holders. That meant, yeah, I was limited to 16 8x10 shots a day, and there was one day where I did have to go back to my hotel room and change my film out. But I was okay with that because it saved me a lot of weight. Each 8x10 film holder is 2 pounds, and that means every picture I take is adding 2 pounds to my kit. Now, if you're shooting 4x5 or 5x7, that weight is decreased, but if you're shooting ultra large format, that weight is significantly increased. So consider that when you're traveling, the number of film holders you have is going to be a physical burden and packing space that you're losing for other valuable things. So with film holders, the big consideration is going to be how many are you going to take with you based on how much you anticipate shooting. Bump that number up by about 20% or so, and that'll be a good ballpark. Here's some other accessories that I recommend taking along with you for a longer trip. If you're going to be changing out film in a darkened space, bring some extra PPE with you, namely some gloves. I use these little blue nitrile gloves because they have a little bit of tooth to them and I can feel the film, and this will keep any of my human oils off of the sheets of film. And potentially, I've never completely ruined a shot with it, but it's not fun when scanning and I see the fingerprints on there. Another thing I'll do, because I'm cleaning out film holders, I'll either bring canned air, that's a no-no in flying, but you can also bring an anti-static brush. This just looks like a really weird hairbrush when you're going through security, so this works pretty good. And then I'll also bring extra film boxes. Now this might seem weird, but what are you gonna do once you expose your film? These triple clamshell style boxes that come with all of your large format film are excellent for organizing that film once it's all done and shot. So I'll usually keep an extra clamshell box. If it has the black bag in it, great. If it doesn't, that's fine. I'll usually just tape the corners around. So I'll bring some gloves to handle the film, extra boxes that I can mark off and say what's in there, or say how many exposures I'm adding each day just to keep track of the film. If I bring multiple types of film, I'll usually have multiple black bags in here for that film. I don't want to mix and match. If I mix and match, I'm not going to have a good time organizing after the fact. It can get really messy. So I'll keep some boxes, some gloves, and an anti-static brush for that. So the next big topic to consider when traveling with large format is how are you going to load the film? This is kind of the peripheral stuff and really easy to knock out. But then this next part is a little bit more personalized. I recommend if you're going to travel with large format and you're going to load in, maybe you not have access to a darkroom space, we're probably not traveling to a place with a darkroom, you can bring tools to create a makeshift darkroom, or you can start to bring with you something like a changing bag or a changing tent. I always recommend bringing at least a changing bag, especially if you're flying and going through airport security. I love these little changing bags because they're super compact. So this little Harrison changing bag, okay, it's not that little, but it's little for 8x10. I can just barely fit a few film holders in here, and I run out of room pretty quickly. If you've not used a changing bag before, it's just a double-walled zippered bag. I really like these older Harrison ones. It has a reflective coating on the outside and then a really thick layer on the inside, and it's double zippered, and it allows me to get my arms in here, and once everything's zippered up, I can start to maneuver around and change things in daylight. So what they really mean is subdued light. I don't really trust these out in bright noonday sun, direct outdoor light. If you're inside with some artificial lighting, as long as that lighting isn't too bright or too direct, you should be okay. But I usually try to load at night or load in subdued light just to make sure my bases are covered. So the main reason I like my changing bag is I use it to replace the top lid of my Pelican 1510 here. This is my carry-on size case. And when you're traveling US, you have a carry-on that can go in the overhead compartment, and then like a personal item, or like I can use a messenger bag, something that can go underneath the seat in front of you. In my messenger bag, I'll usually carry all of my films. So all my boxes of film and my changing boxes, I'll put that in my personal effect and my smartphone. But then other electronics I'm traveling with, small little bits, LED lights, my lenses, and my changing materials will go in here. So if I'm ever stopped at airport security and they're like, hey, what's in this box? I don't panic. Yeah, what's in this box is film. If you want to see what's inside there, it's got to go in this changing bag. It's a light, tight thing. I've had no pushback on that when traveling in the United States. If you're traveling through the EU, a lot of times that stuff just has to go through the carry-on X-ray. It's not going to be a checked bag X-ray, so it shouldn't fog your film, but just know the EU, they're usually going to force you through the machine, and it's not a worry. I've had my sheet films thrown through the carry-on X-ray 5-6 times. It was fine. I didn't see any fogging on the film, but I did travel with films that were no greater than ISO 400 in speed. Now, I haven't done any air travel since the newer carry-on X-rays have been implemented in the United States, and there is word out there that film is starting to get fogged with those. So the next time I travel with that, I'll be able to fill you guys in and see if that is something that's going to affect my sheet films. But it's scary if it does, because, well, I like traveling and I like shooting large format when I travel. So the changing bag is great because it's really compact and it fits with my big Pelican case. So in addition to that, for air travel, if I want to bring a lot of film holders on a trip, I usually don't bring this one via air, but there was one trip a couple years ago that I made that it really helped, and that is a film changing tent. So much like a film changing bag, it's a double layered piece, but they're a lot big. They can get a lot bigger, and they give you more space. So more space means more potential for dust, but also more room to move around and kind of breathe within that bag. I don't know if my bag will fit on the table. Let's see. So I've already got mine assembled. This is a film changing tent. This is the Camry Bochet 8x10, 11x14 tent. They actually make one that's bigger than this somehow, but this is I think this is their extra large, not their extra large size changing tent. You have to purchase these guys on eBay if you don't live in mainland China, and they'll ship it out to you. I kind of purchased this as a throwaway item, but it actually lasted longer than a big 3-week trip I took to Africa, so it was kind of a bonus when it still held together. These tents don't seem to stand changes in heat and pressure as well as the Harrison bag. The Harrison bag is meant to compact down super small. This gets down decently small, but after a few years, it's already started to kind of chip off and fall apart. It is a lot cheaper than the Harrison bags and tents. That's why I ended up with mine. But if you want one that's going to last more than a decade, I'd recommend going with the Harrison models. They do a good job. They are good for indirect light or indoor light, but no natural light coming in. That stuff's way too bright. So kind of consider, ISO 1600 is kind of like the level of light that you want to let hit that changing tent. If I do have to change it sometimes, like close to a window or outside, I'll actually throw a blanket or quilt on top of that, again, just to make sure that nothing is getting ruined. So that's been around the world a couple times already. I love having ways to quickly change out my film holders because, again, every time I use an extra film holder, that's adding more weight to my kit, and these bags and tents weigh very, very little. So there's the tent, all rolled up, ready to go. A little bit smaller than some large sleeping bags, so folds up pretty nice and tight and packs with me. I just remembered I have one more tip that can really help, especially if you're shooting larger than 4x5 and you're traveling. 4x5 cameras and even 5x7 cameras have a pretty easy time fitting into your carry-on case, but if you're shooting 8x10 or ultra large format, you're not going to have any room left once you're done considering your film and film holders. So if you do have to do that nasty thing, which is checking your luggage and the camera along with it, I have a big tip for that. If you're going to have to check your 8x10 or larger camera, I actually recommend taking the ground glass off the camera. So this ground glass protector, that prevents against normal bumps and bruises, not the use and abuse that you're going to see just from traveling with it and throwing it through security. So what I recommend is to remove the ground glass. To remove your ground glass, what you'll have to do is take off the little springs with the screws here, and then once that is fully removed, just place that in a film box and send that along with the rest of your film. It's done wonders for me. I also recommend having a backup ground glass, or if you're going to do a lot of travel and the bag's going in and out of different things, I also recommend having a ground glass made out of acrylic. The problem with frosted acrylic is it is a little bit, it's a little bit less bright than you're used to with a standard ground glass or a ground glass with a Fresnel or a magnifying screen, intensifying screen, but it's going to work great. I've used acrylic. It's pretty much shatterproof. It'll last as long as anything else on the camera when you replace it that way, and it's going to make it to and from your trip safely. Those are the main little things that I use when I'm traveling with large format. Traveling with large format is a burden. It can feel like a logistical nightmare if you've never done it before, but treat it like you've treated any other small day trip, except you're considering other things like the added weight of this large format kit and how can you be efficient while loading and changing your film maybe daily, every other day, hopefully not once a week, because that means you're going to have a lot of film holders on you. What do you bring along with you when you travel with large format? Have you traveled or flown with large format yet? Are you nervous about it? Let me know down below in the comments. And if you have any long form questions or something you don't want to drop in the public comments, you can always feel free to email me too. I'm going to drop my email down below in the description. It's matt.marrash@gmail.com. Feel free to hit me up with any questions you've got. Just know, if it's a really good one, I might read it here on the show. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time for more LFF.